G'day folks, and welcome to part 4 of this learning diary for Axis Empire's Dai Senso. This is part 2 of this scenario focusing on the China incident, scenario A2, one of the learning scenarios. In this video, I'm going to just really summarize the action from the first turn, which is May-June 1937, through until the end of the July-August turn. So these are the 3 summer turns that start the scenario. And of course, in that first video, I did the Axis Japanese turn. Now I'm moving on to the Western powers turn. And things are moving much quickly. Once I have a grasp of the system, I move through these turns relatively fast. The Western powers begin with this cooling declaration card. And there's a lot that doesn't apply here. The main thing, well, there are 2 main things. First, they place in the delay box the Kiangsu infantry, and 2011 infantry and 1111 expeditionary infantry. And that's going to be important because that expeditionary force can stack with the Hopei forces, which I desperately need right now. There are some political events which come out later on as well. And the main thing here is I roll, select one neutral Chinese country and roll on the table. I rolled a 6. So then I roll on the cabinet crisis table. And the result here was 15.31 power shift. This dictates that if the Japanese government marker is in its holding box, the Axis faction may flip the marker over. Well, the marker is on its army side, and the Japanese are conducting army operations, so they're pretty happy with how that is at the moment. We then get into the administration phase. Then there's not a lot that the Western powers, these 2 Chinese nations, can do. They have no blitz markers, no support markers. In fact, however, they do break down. You can see just to the northeast of Qingchao, they break down this 2-step unit into 2 1-step units. And the idea here is they want to reinforce that last remaining city out on the left. So they break down, and then in the movement phase, they move that unit over to reinforce that city. That's about all the Chinese can do, the Western powers can do. They have no offensive capability. They're really just desperately trying to slow down the Japanese. So they hold 1 unit behind in the right. We then get to the Axis turn, June, July. And it was around about this point that I realized I'd made a mistake with the Guangdong headquarters, which had advanced into Hopei. They're not allowed to leave Manchukuo, so I pulled them back. And I went back through the combat, and I realized that there was no change in the results. So they could still provide their range support and modifiers and column shift to that combat that took place out of Peiping. And so I've just brought them back to the border, and I continue from here. And the main thing happening here is I decide with the Japanese to take things a little slow rather than launching a weak attack on that last remaining Hopei city. I send the Air Force in to that hex to the right of the city across the river. So it is basically, it starts off as a 3 versus 1 attack, but that Guangdong headquarters can support this, so it becomes 6-1. They provide a HQ ranged support shift. The Air Force provides an additional shift, so it's a huge attack. I probably over support this attack, probably wasting the Air Force as well, in hindsight, but they obliterate the defenders and wipe them out pretty handily, and then advance across the river. This is the important thing, because I want to have 2 units next to those defenders. So in the Axis to Allied turn, there's pretty much nothing they can do. We can't stack these 2 different Chinese nations together. They're minor countries. They can't stack together, so I can't bring in these southern defenders to stack in that city. Hope is pretty much left alone up in the north in their city. And so the Allied turn progresses very smoothly. It's a non-seasonal turn. There's no movement, no combat, nothing happens. We then get to the July-August turn, and the Japanese launch an attack on that final city. Now, there's no HQ support for this. They've exhausted their air force, so it is a basic 6 versus 3 or 2-to-1 odds. This slides down to the 3-to-2 column, and the Japanese rolled a 3, which is a straight exchange result with no attrition. So the Japanese lose a step loss, and the Hope defenders have to lose a step as well, and they take that 1-step unit on top. But they are being ground down. The Japanese lose a step. You may notice also these Japanese reinforcements. These are the replacements that have been built in Japan. They're being transported across the sea. They're moving to occupy those cities in the north. This is required, I think, for minor power conquest. Now, I could focus on bringing these units south to attack that last step. I did think about this. But yeah, it's taken a while to get these guys over here. This is now 3 turns with normal movement and then reserve movement. So they're almost in place. And that then brings us to the end of the July-August turn, and we're about to start the next season with a new series of seasonal turns.